Good morning. In a significant political development from Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney has solidified his grip on power, achieving an absolute majority for his Liberal Party in Parliament. This historic feat, accomplished without new general elections, positions Carney as a striking counterpoint to US President Donald Trump, advocating for a path of sober realism and practical solutions. Today, April 15, 2026, marks a pivotal moment for Prime Minister Carney. Barely a year ago, he orchestrated one of Canada's most remarkable political comebacks. Taking over leadership from Justin Trudeau, Carney reversed a 20-point deficit for the Liberal Party within weeks, securing a narrow victory over the Conservatives. However, that election did not grant him an absolute majority in parliamentary seats. That changed this week. Carney has now written history again. He achieved this crucial, absolute majority, not through a new general election, but through a series of successful by-elections and, notably, by attracting Conservative members of Parliament to cross the floor and join his Liberal ranks. Canadian media universally hailed this as a triumph for Carney, a testament to his growing influence and strategic prowess. Prime Minister Carney, however, responded to this landmark achievement with characteristic composure and humility. He stated, "The voters have placed their trust in our government. We accept this support with humility, determination, and a clear vision for what our country requires in this historic period." Experts view Carney as embodying the very antithesis of US President Trump's political style. Karim Boulos, a professor at Concordia University in Montreal, highlights how the former central bank manager represents a pragmatic realism focused on tangible solutions rather than personal grandstanding. Professor Boulos notes that Carney has successfully transformed the Liberal Party into what he calls the Canada Party, appealing to a broad spectrum of the electorate. Carney's stature on the world stage has also been growing. Following his widely acclaimed speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, his approval ratings soared to 60%. Professor Boulos observed, "He spoke as a statesman should, and honestly at that. For the first time in a long time, Canadians were proud of their Prime Minister." Carney's foreign policy vision explicitly calls for Canada to reorient itself, moving away from an over-reliance on the United States and forging new international partnerships. With an absolute majority, Prime Minister Carney now possesses unprecedented legislative power. He no longer needs to seek coalition partners or compromise with other parties to pass his legislative agenda. Professor Boulos emphasized he can now do everything he deems necessary to advance the country, new laws, new projects, and all without the consent of other parties. This newfound authority means Carney can push through his ambitious agenda with far greater speed and fewer roadblocks. And Carney wasted no time in demonstrating his resolve. As his very first action, he announced the suspension of the fuel tax, effective from next week until early September. This measure is expected to reduce gasoline prices across Canada by an equivalent of 7 cents per liter. Beyond this immediate relief for consumers, Carney's administration is also committed to constructing more affordable housing units and further diversifying the Canadian economy to lessen its dependence on the United States. However, Carney's agenda also includes potentially controversial projects. Political expert Boulos anticipates that the Prime Minister will now press ahead with the construction of a disputed oil pipeline. While acknowledging that this project is likely to upset Indigenous communities and residents of Quebec, Boulos argues that it is crucial for Canada's long-term economic prosperity, given the country's ample oil reserves. Prime Minister Carney aims to position Canada and his party as more business-friendly. Currently, he enjoys broad support from a majority of Canadians. Yet, Professor Boulos also cautions that this newly acquired absolute majority carries its own risks. Within a broader Liberal Party, the left wing might feel emboldened and assert itself more vigorously. Therefore, Boulos concludes, it is imperative for Carney to deliver concrete improvements for Canadians as soon as possible to maintain party unity and public trust. Canada is indeed charting a new course under the leadership of Prime Minister Carney. What's your take on Canada's Carney achieves absolute majority, defies Trump? Share your view in the comments. Do you think this will matter in the next news cycle? This video was generated using artificial intelligence.